Hi, my name is Andrea Buckley, and I am a licensed mental health therapist in the state of Michigan. And welcome to the Connection Diaries. I'm so happy that you are here. All November long, I am answering all of your questions, whether you are a current client of mine or whether you are a part of my online community, following me on social media, however you may find this video. If you have a question for me, I want you to send it to me. And if you read the caption, you will learn all the different ways that you can interact with me so that you can ask a question that maybe you've always wanted to ask a therapist, or maybe you've received the answer, but you want a little bit more creativity around what the response to that question could be. That's one thing that I'm really passionate about. I love building curriculum. I love answering questions in different ways for different brains. And that tends to be why I think people are attracted to the work that I do. And so for this particular video, what I want to do is I want to answer the question, how do I get over my fear of rejection and my fear of failure? So we're going to take our time with this one because this is a really popular fear. Whether you have an anxious attachment style or avoidant attachment style, whether you're someone who, wears their heart on their sleeve or someone who distances themselves from their emotions, at the root of our human experience is the fear of rejection. A lot of what we do, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, is trying to get away from being rejected by others. A lot of what we do is also trying to move and distance ourselves from feelings of failure. It's not the failure in and of itself that hurts, it's the meaning that we associate with the failure. It's not the rejection in and of itself that hurts, it's our own struggles with accepting ourselves and living a life that is authentic that really hurts. And so in this video, we're going to talk about that and really just have a conversation. So get comfy, get cozy, grab a journal, grab a notebook, and jot down some questions. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to let me know. Jot down some notes, any nuggets that stand out to you, anything that you want to chew on. And as always, there will be journaling prompts that you can find in a caption of this video so that you can begin to marinate and chew on these concepts a little bit more. So let's jump in with the fear of rejection. So it's kind of self-explanatory, but I want to define it just so that we're making sure we're on the same page with each other. So when I think about the fear of rejection, I think about our tendency sometimes to wear a mask to try to manipulate how people perceive us. Because if I can manipulate how you perceive me, then there's less likely of a chance that you will reject me. And so that's how we typically start off. We learn to mold ourselves into versions of ourselves that we think will be most desirable. So, oh, you don't like a big laugh? Okay, I'm going to start to, do a little tiny laugh. Okay, I'm learning, I'm taking too much space. Okay, I'll start to shrink myself. I don't like my natural hair, or people are telling me my natural hair isn't beautiful. Okay, I'll, straighten it. We learn these things over and over, and life becomes how to get the gold star. You learn that from a young age, right? And the reason for this is because we are social creatures. Like, we want to be in community, we want to be loved and liked, and these are natural part of our wiring. In order to get that done, we will sacrifice authenticity. That is also a natural part of how we survive on earth. So if you find yourself masking, if you find yourself people pleasing, if you find yourself doing anything and everything to avoid rejection, you're not alone. And this isn't a video to judge you. It's really a video to invite you to think about, how can I get my needs met and release my fear of rejection? Because the truth of the matter is, rejection is impossible to escape. If anything, you should be getting rejected if you are moving in a way that is authentic to who you are. Because of our world, because of our society, because of the diversity on earth, it's impossible for everyone to, quote unquote, accept or agree with us. So, funny thought that I had this morning, if there was a club, right, for peanut butter lovers, I would be rejected from that club because I personally hate peanut butter. I know that's random. I know that's low stakes, right? But it's just a tiny example of, like, rejection is just what happens. Now, if there was a peanut butter club and they were like, hey, Drew, we still want you around and we'll make sure that they have almond butter for you, then to me, that is inclusion, right? And it's okay to want to be in spaces maybe where folks are including you, even when there is difference. But what we're talking about today is just owning who we are and being okay with people not being okay with that. And so that may mean that there may be some clubs or groups where I am not necessarily welcome, or where I may be rejected from because they may represent, values that I do not agree with. And that is okay. It's actually a good thing for me to be able to stand 10 toes down and say, no, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is what's important to me. And as a result, that may mean that I will be rejected. So a lot of times the fear of rejection is not necessarily about being rejected by others. It really has to do with our ability to accept ourselves. Because a lot of times what I hear when people talk about their fear of rejection, they fear that people will reject them for the same reasons that they reject themselves, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. So there may be certain things that if someone rejected me for, I wouldn't really trip about it because I've accepted it about myself. Like if somebody was like, "You always wearing those sunflower earrings." Okay, that's true, and I like it. I like these sunflower earrings. I love wearing cute earrings, right? That's something I've accepted about myself, so it's not going to pierce me as much. But there's other sore spots that I have, or sensitive spots, that if people were to maybe judge me for or reject me for because I haven't 100% owned them for myself or accepted them for myself, they may weigh a little bit heavier. And so when I think about being my fear of rejection, right, I think about how do I accept the parts of myself that I find difficult to accept? How do I own who I am? And how do I prioritize authenticity over the acceptance of others? How do I prioritize authenticity over my fear of rejection? Because the ultimate rejection is really disconnecting yourself from your authentic self. So what happens is I disconnect myself from my authentic self, and I am seemingly, accepted by other people, but I am over and over and over again rejected by myself. So this thing that we fear, that we think that we're avoiding, we end up perpetuating because we begin to reject ourselves. And what that does is it sends this message out to other people that they can also do the same. They may not realize they're doing it, right? Because this stuff is happening subconsciously, but they're not really getting to know the real you. So they're not even getting a chance to really embrace you for real because of the mask that you're wearing and because of this fear of rejection. So, fear of rejection really is about your ability to accept yourself. It's really about self rejection. If I move forward viewing lives through a lens of fear of rejection, meaning I'm doing everything I can to stop this rejection, what I end up doing is I'm rejecting myself over and over. I'm teaching myself that you are not lovable, that it's not okay to be you, that your authentic self is not enough. And what that does is it begins to kind of like chip away at my self trust and breaks me down and puts me in a space where I don't feel comfortable showing up as who I am, but I prioritize being able to show up as who everybody else wants me to be. Do you get what I'm saying? So, fear of rejection, what I want you to think about, if this is something that you struggle with, is I want you to name, I will be rejected. Like if you could say that out loud, I will be rejected. But I will be rejected for being me, not necessarily rejected for being someone else. So I either am going to reject myself, meaning putting my needs, my desires, my thoughts to the side in order to show up as what I perceive other people want, or I'm going to be rejected by others because I am being exactly who I am and who I was purposed to be. And I get to make that decision because I have agency. So when you think about fear of rejection, I want you to think about what is really underneath fear of rejection, which is a lack of self-acceptance and a lack of authenticity. And what road do you want to choose? Do you want to choose the road of authenticity and self-acceptance? Or do you want to choose the road of inauthenticity and the acceptance of others? Either way, you cannot avoid rejection. It will happen. I'm going to either reject myself or other people are going to reject me. And I would just like to say, I'd rather be rejected by other people than by myself. And then once I accept myself and I'm able to move authentically, what I then do is I begin to attract people in my life who also allow me to do the same. Because naturally, I want to be around people who accept me and love me for who I am. And I begin to show them who I am. I take the mask off and they get to see who I am, which is a very vulnerable experience to be seen. And I build connection based off that versus building connection off of this mask version of who I am. So, yeah, that's that first one. So, fear of rejection. The second fear I want to talk about is the fear of failure. This is my favorite one because a lot of us fear failure. And the truth of the matter is, the only reason we fear failure is because of our response to it. So, if you go all the way back to your childhood, I want you to think about the way in which your caregivers, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, teachers responded when you failed. Did they shame you? Did they ridicule you? Did they talk bad about you? Did they call you names? Did they look at you in disgust? Did they give you the silent treatment? That one hurts the most sometimes. Any passive aggressive behaviors you saw around failure? Our nervous system remembers those responses and begins to replicate those responses when we fail as adults. And so it's not that we fear failure, it's that we fear the response to failure. So the only way to get rid of this fear is to change your relationship to failure. You can reframe failure. So, what does failure even mean? And you want to change your response to failure. When I fail, I get to still celebrate myself for trying. When I fail, I get to still go out and have my favorite cookies and wine and restaurant snacks or whatever. When I fail, I get to still see myself as worthy. When I fail, I'm still worthy of being in community with other people that love me. When I think about a fear of failure, I think about sometimes when we fail, we define ourselves as failures. Like it's almost like an identity versus an event that happened. So if I say, hey, I have this basketball, I want to try to make it 5 times into the hoop, and I only make it one, I failed to do the goal that I set. That does not make me a failure. It may make me not good at basketball because I'm not, but it's not making me a failure. The act is a failure. So how do I separate my identity from my actions, my efforts, what I'm able to produce? And again, because we live in a capitalist society, that may be difficult to do. And depending on your upbringing, that may be difficult to do because you may have learned that I have to perform well to be loved, that I have to be perfect to be loved. And again, this might not have been a conscious thought that was said to you, but it may be something that your subconscious learned over time. And so you begin to move forward in that way, and that manifests itself as a fear of failure. Because failure in of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Think about like a little baby, when they're learning to walk or something like that. Like they're just all cute and they're walking and then they fall. Nobody's like, you suck, you're a failure. Why aren't you, learning how to walk fast enough? I mean, maybe some people, but most people would not respond that way, right? It may even be funny. Like we might laugh. The baby even laughs. If you've seen a baby maybe sometimes the baby may cry, whatever the response may be, but we do not ridicule the person for learning something new and be in a new development. So it's okay to see failure as just, I'm in this new stage of development. Other times we may fail and we be like, dang, I should have known better. And sometimes we shouldn't have known better because that's a whole nother conversation. But let's just say, okay, there's been times where you're like, okay, I feel like I knew what to do and I just missed the mark. Okay, a lot of times we have unrealistic expectations for ourselves that we believe that we're supposed to perfectly show up. And that is a narrative not rooted in love. Perfectionism is not rooted in love. So when people say like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, you are telling me that you have a sore spot when it comes to your relationship to yourself. Because perfectionism is not possible. So even in times where I feel like, dang, I should have known better, I can still give myself grace. I can still say, we'll try again next time. I can go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what was different about this situation that made me move in a way that I didn't expect myself to move? I can get curious about the behavior. Failure is a learning opportunity. It's not your identity. You don't have to stay stuck there. And so this is how we move through these fears. We change our relationship to them. Everything's relational, right? I finally understand and get that. So again, it's not your fear of rejection. It's your fear of authenticity, and it's your lack of self-acceptance. It's not your fear of failure. It's your inability to not identify with your failure. and maybe your struggles with responding to yourself in a grace-filled, compassion-filled way after you do fail. So these are some things I want you to sit with. I'm going to drop some journaling prompts in the caption below. Keep your questions going because I love this. I love having conversations with you all. And as always, I want you to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And stay tuned for next week, Thursday, when I drop the next video. Always remember that you are loved, that you are enough, and stay inspired.